boys and girls, and welcome to Full Steam Ahead, our last Full Steam Ahead of the season. And today we're going to be making mug cakes. Mug cakes are a pretty recent phenomenon, and they've taken off like crazy. There are whole cookbooks in our system about mug cakes. You can search online and find tons of recipes for mug cakes. But let's talk about the basics first. Why a mug cake? Well, when you want dessert, do you really think you can go up to Mom and say, "Mom, can you bake me a cake now?" She's been working all day. Dad's busy doing something. Nobody has time to make you a whole big cake and wait for it to cool and make the frosting and frost it. And then you're going to have a whole cake laying around the house and everyone's going to eat it, and then everyone's going to feel bad about eating too many sweets. What's the solution? A mug cake. A cake for one person. One serving. That's not so bad. Now, how are you going to get a mug cake? It all starts with the microwave. A microwave has a panel inside, and the panel is covering something called a magnetron, which sounds a little bit like a transformer, but the magnetron is what makes it possible. It takes the electricity from the outlet, powers it through the magnetron, and makes microwaves. That's where we get the name microwave. Microwaves. Now micro, like micro machines, microbiotics, micro means small. So these are smaller than other waves. That's why they're called microwaves. And the microwaves go through your microwave oven and they vibrate and excite the molecules that are in there. Excite's kind of a funny word, but it makes them move really fast, and that creates the heat. And there's a turntable in your microwave to make sure the heat and the microwaves and everything is distributed evenly so that it's not just going on one piece. And how does all of that affect the ingredients in the microwave? We're going to find out right now by starting with the basic vanilla mug cake. Of all the mug cakes I've made, this one is actually my favorite, the most basic one. Who knew? So what we need to do is start with some of the ingredients I put in your packet. Now I recommend you watch this whole thing and decide how you feel about the different flavors and the different ways we make it before you decide how you want to make yours yourself. So watch me and learn from my good things or my mistakes. 4 tablespoons of flour is the beginning. I'm making it in a separate cup. I'm not putting this cup in the microwave. But I want to make sure all my ingredients are mixed and my cup is sprayed with vegetable spray or coated with oil before I put the ingredients in. So I'm going to make it in this cup first. Mix all your dry ingredients together first. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 tablespoons of flour, 1/2 teaspoon of baking powder. Baking powder is going to be what gives it its lift, and we'll talk more about that in a bit. I don't have a 1/2 teaspoon measure with me, so I'm using 2/4. If you add 2/4 of something, you get a 1/2, so I'm using 2/4 teaspoons. 3 tablespoons of sugar. It seems like a lot, I know, but it is dessert. This isn't meant to be a health food. All right, and a pinch of salt. Now, I could pinch or I can go shaky, 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 shaky real quick. Just a little bit of salt in there to give it some flavor, enhance the flavors. Now, I want to mix all of the dry ingredients together first, so you don't have lumps of flour and lumps of sugar and, heaven forbid, a lump of baking powder. Ugh, that would taste terrible if you bit into that. So we mix the dry ingredients together. Now we've got to add the wet. So, 1/2 tablespoon of butter, softened. It could even be melted, that's all right. I happen to have a 1/2 tablespoon measurer. If you don't, you can use a little more than a teaspoon, or you can cut on the wrapper of the butter, however you want to measure it. And this part, you know, we do talk about how this is science. It's not going to ruin it if there's a little more or a little less butter. A little more or a little less. Okay, there's the butter. 4 tablespoons of milk. 2, 3, 4. And what's going to give it its flavor? Vanilla. I love the smell of vanilla, the taste of vanilla. It's all good. Half a teaspoon. Well, I really like it, so I'm going to take my teaspoon measure and I'm going to do half, but maybe a little bit more than that, because I'm really fond of vanilla. Okay, all the ingredients are ready. What do? We have to mix them. If you just put this in a cup in the microwave, oh, it is not going to be something you'll want to eat. So we need to mix until all the ingredients are blended together. And I want to spray or wipe with oil the inside of my mug. This is a step that isn't mandatory, but you'll appreciate it if you have to do your own cleanup. And if someone at home is doing the cleanup for you afterwards, they're going to appreciate it if you do this step, because it will help the cake not stick to the sides. All right, I'm all stirred. My mug is treated. Now I want to use a mug that's bigger than I think I'm going to need. So if you look at a mug and it's kind of a delicate little mug, you might want to think, I should probably get a little bit bigger mug than that, because our cake is going to expand. We want to make sure it doesn't overflow, because again, that's just going to make a mess. So it fills not even half of my mug. Now, if I put that on the microwave now, about a minute, a little more than a minute, it's going to be great. But what happens if you leave out one of those ingredients? We're going to find out right now. This is our science today. We're going to enjoy a treat, and that's all well and good. We've just done some measuring and some math. That's awesome. But the scientist in us wants to know, what happens if we leave ingredients out? Well, the structure of the cake is the flour and sugar, so we're not going to try to leave that out. So I'm putting 4 tablespoons of flour in each of the mug cakes I'm going to make. I'm making 3 others. 2, 3, 4. All right, and the sugar, we need 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Get a real assembly line going here. If you have a big family and everyone wants a mug cake, you can do it like this. 3. The butter, 1 for each of them. I almost put it in the one I've already got ready to go. That would be, oh, I want to not put butter in one of them. That's one of the things that we will see, how it affects the way it cooks. Same with the baking powder. With the baking powder, a half teaspoon, I want to put a half teaspoon in this one. Remember, I'm using 2/4. And this one, but not this one. It's getting confusing, so I want to make notes to myself that that one has no butter, that one has no baking powder, and then I'm going to add egg to this one. which will make it a little bit different, and we'll see how. So I'm going to say most recipes, when they call for egg, they say half an egg, which is kind of confusing to get half an egg. So we have to whip the egg up and then take half of it. So I'm going to say that's about a tablespoon of egg. So we put a tablespoon of egg in this one. All right, and mix. Starting the mixing process before I add the milk. A pinch of salt. 4 tablespoons of milk. And all the same other ingredients, except for what we've narrowed down. All right, so stirring. You might see the stirring. All right, so we want to make sure that each mug is prepared. So I've got the one with the egg. The one with no butter. And the one with no baking powder. We're going to put each one of them into the microwave oven for 65 seconds, 70 seconds. I'll keep an eye on them and see how they come out. But I will put them, whatever time I put them in, I will put them all in for the same amount of time, because when you're a scientist, you can't just willy-nilly change the times around if you're trying to figure out what one ingredient is going to do to affect the outcome. If we wanted to decide if it's the time in the microwave that affected the outcome, then we would change the time in the microwave. So I'm going to put each of these in, and I'll be right back. Welcome back. That was a little bit chaotic and a little bit messy, but it has resulted in 4 different mug cakes. I'm going to turn each one out so that you can see the difference. First, I'm going to start with the one that's done from the recipe. I did each of them for 60 seconds. Sometimes I've done it longer, and you can see there's a little bit of wet on the bottom of this one, and that's probably just because I did 60 seconds instead of 65 or 70. But I did want them all to have the same time. I'm going to enjoy eating this one. I've tried it before, and it's yummy. Now I have the one with the egg. Now what an egg does is, as the bubbles of carbon dioxide are forming from the baking powder, the egg surrounds the bubbles and gets firm, gets hard, and holds on to those bubbles. So you're going to have, it probably won't taste much different, but it will have a different texture, and you can see it's more structurally sound. So if you had a cake that you were going to cut into slices, you would definitely want to have egg in it. I just didn't put egg in the recipes I gave you because I like to eat it the texture of the one that doesn't have the egg in it. And since we're not slicing, we don't have to worry about structure so much. But here's the one with the egg, and it's certainly holding up better. The next one is the one with no butter. Now, butter or oil, whichever you put into your recipe, is the fat, and the fat kind of holds it all together and makes it moist. And you can see from this one that it's not very moist. It did not go up as high. I will try to take a bite of that, but I don't think it's going to taste as good as the others. And last but not least, no baking powder. And this is where you can see that baking powder is an important ingredient. It did not rise half as much. It pretty much stayed the same height it was when it was wet. And it's kind of like plump. They call it stodgy because it's not going to have any fluff to it. It's not going to have any lightness to it. It's going to be like paste. So let me get something. This is kind of mean of me because I'm going to taste them in front of you. But you can practice with your own at home. You'll get to taste. So first I'm going to try the regular one. Just as I expected. I've made it before. It's light, it's fluffy, and vanilla. Delicious. The egg, yeah, oh, you can really see how it held on to I'll just put it to the thing. The bubbles that the baking powder made, the holes are really evident. You can really see them, and that's because the egg surrounded those bubbles and kept them from collapsing. Tastes very good. Tastes the exact same. It just has a slightly different texture. It's more springy, more bouncy. You have to chew it more. But it's very good. Kind of worried about the next two. We've got no butter. Oh, yeah. It's drier. I'm not looking forward to this. It's okay. It doesn't taste like something bad, but it is dry. It's like if you mixed crackers in with your food. It's just dry. The one I'm least looking forward to, no baking powder. Oh, it's heavy. And it has kind of like you're chewing gum a little. I'm going to need a glass of water after that one. Again, the flavor is good. It still tastes like a vanilla cake, but the texture is all wrong. It's like I'm getting glue in the top of my mouth. Not good. So I'm going to put those aside now. Woo! And make one chocolate mug cake. So you can see how the chocolate mug cake is made. The ingredients are a little bit different, but the method is the exact same. We're going to take a cup and we're going to spray it because we know that we don't want it to all stick to the sides like paste. Then we are going to get a cup to mix it in. And we start with a 1/4 cup of flour, which is very similar to the tablespoon amount we used before, but since the recipe calls for it in a 1/4 cup, that's what I'm going to use. A 1/4 cup. 2 tablespoons of unsweetened cocoa. Now I tried this recipe the other day and it tasted very, very heavy on the cocoa. So I would like it to be just a little less powdery tasting. So I'm going to use I got it. Okay. Let's see. I'm going to use 1 and a bit. How's that? 1 and a bit. Totally not scientific, but we're past the science right now. We're working on flavor. So 1 and a bit tablespoons. Again, I'm going to mix all the dry ingredients before I introduce any wet ingredients. A 1/4 teaspoon baking powder. The other one used a 1/2, so this is going to be a little bit different. Let's see what happens with a 1/4 teaspoon baking powder. 2 tablespoons of sugar, so it has less sugar, although the lady who wrote the recipe did write at the bottom that she likes it not to be quite so sweet, so that's why she uses less sugar. I'm not the most organized chef, as you have seen from all of these things that we've made together. And 1/8 of a teaspoon of salt. Good night. Okay, mix the dry first. Very important, mix the dry first. Now, I know these are treats that you're making, but you're also making it from scratch. And when you make recipes from scratch, they are a little more healthful than if you were to grab a Little Debbie snack cake off the shelf. Nothing against Little Debbie, but she has a lot of other ingredients besides salt, flour, sugar, cocoa, the things we're putting in. Okay, so I've mixed the dry ingredients, and now I need to add a 1/4 cup plus 1 tablespoon of milk. A 1/4 cup plus 1 tablespoon of milk. And 2 tablespoons of vegetable oil instead of butter. They put vegetable oil in this one. I'm starting to mix it already because when you mix the ingredients, the molecules in the dry ingredients absorb the wet, and so the amount that's in your cup will sink a little bit and make more room. That's why I'm mixing before I put the oil in. And usually I would be, I almost said I'd be a little bit neater, but I've met me. I wouldn't. I'm kind of a messy cook. And I do things like that, putting too much in one, so I'll have to put a little less in the other. This is why I didn't go into actual science, because you're not allowed to, to fudge and make little overages and underages like I've been doing. So, stir, stir, stir. I'm going to stir it and stir it and stir it. While I'm stirring for a moment, I want to tell you that when I was little, we didn't have microwaves, so I could not have even learned how to make a mug cake if I wanted to. But we had something called an easy bake oven. They might still make easy bake ovens, I'm pretty sure they do. And that came with little cake mixes, little tiny cake mixes, but it didn't cook with microwaves. It cooked with a light bulb. Still does. It cooks with a light bulb. So the light bulb gets very hot. That's the energy that works with the ingredients to bind them together, is the heat from a light bulb. And we used to eat it like it was the most delicious cake in the world. But now that I've learned how to make mug cakes, I don't think I could ever go back to easy bake ovens again. So I'm going to take my batter, pour it into, sticky, pour it into the prepared mug. Okay. And put this in the microwave. I'm going to give that 65 seconds. And while that's cooking, I want to tell you about some alternatives that you have. First of all, add-ins. These are basic recipes for vanilla and chocolate, and if you look online, you'll find, or in a book, you'll find tons of recipes for all different flavors. But without even trying a new recipe, you can get new flavors. You could add a little bit of peanut butter. You can add it before you put it in the microwave, or you can add it as a topping after it comes out of the microwave. Sprinkles. These taste especially good on the vanilla cake. Again, you can put them on while the batter is wet, or you can put them on when the batter comes out. Craisins. Craisins or raisins are a good thing. And remember, the peanut butter and the craisins are kind of healthy, so if you want to health up your mug cake, that's one way to do it. Chocolate chips are a fun add-in, especially on the chocolate cake. You could put the chocolate chips in ahead of time. That way they get all melty in the microwave. I've tried something new for the first time. I bought some lemon curd, and I tried the lemon curd with the vanilla cake as like a topping. I put it on the side and I take a bite of cake and a bite of the lemon curd. Tastes like lemon meringue pie. So delicious. Now those are add-ins, things to add flavor. But what if you really need to do some convincing on this mug cake? Because it is a treat and it's probably not something you should do every day. But if you wanted to make it a little healthier, there are ways you can fix that. First of all, the flour that gives it the structure. I used plain white processed flour, but there's all different kinds of flour, and whole wheat would make a healthier mug cake. I use sugar. In the vanilla cupcake, I use 3 tablespoons, and in the chocolate, I use 2. That's quite a bit of sugar. You could add an artificial sweetener if you like, or something as simple as honey. You might have to practice a time or two to get the ratio right, but that would be a healthier way to make a mug cake. And the fat that's in the cupcake, whether you're using the oil, like in the chocolate mug cake, or the butter from the vanilla mug cake, in place of that, you can use applesauce. Again, it might take you a time or two to get the right amount. Start with putting the same amount and see how that works. But if you switched out some of those ingredients, this could actually be a healthy mug cake. In fact, if you do it with the egg, if you think about it, if you use wheat flour, egg, applesauce, and honey, that is a healthy breakfast. All right, we're going to see how the chocolate one came out. I'm dying to try this one. Ooh, steamy hot, steamy hot. All right. Just going to go around the edges, just a weensy bit to help it unstick. Oh, yes. Yes. Chocolate. Now, it stayed up pretty straight even though there was no egg in it. So I think if we had egg in this one, it might even go up another inch or so. And this already has a good structure, so it really doesn't need the egg for structure. It also helped that I did an extra 5 seconds on the cooking. 5 seconds in a microwave is actually a decent amount of time. So yeah, I'm sorry that you're not eating this yet, and I am, but let me give it a try. Oh yeah, that's the stuff. I think cutting back on the cocoa made a big difference. I'm going to be honest with you. If you really like cake, I would put more sugar in it or some honey. It's not as sweet as if you took a bite of chocolate cake, but it is definitely chocolatey enough with only 1.5 tablespoons of cocoa powder. So that brings us to the end of our last steam of the season. I am so glad you joined me all these weeks. And it's been fun to meet you at the door and talk about some of the things that you've done. And thank you if you sent pictures in so that I could see your work at home. I'm very excited about getting to see you in the not too distant future. Being together with you here in the room will just make this 1,000 times more fun. So, before I go, I want to wish you happiest of holidays this season. And I want to give a special shout out to my Auntie Dot, who watches this from Rhode Island. Hi Auntie Dot, love you. Thanks again, boys and girls. Have a happy holiday. Bye-bye.